The senior has announced that today, to discuss this issue, we're joined by Aprile Rickert, health reporter at WFPL, and our state director, Minorities, Dr. Jane on the greater thank you for participating.
One, always.
Well, it's some of them so certain
clearly have evidence and have been proven in scientific studies to actually have a lot of medical benefits. And there are some FDA approved drugs that include just those chemicals. The drawbacks to the medical marijuana is a sense that marijuana is not really a medicine, it's a plant. And when we think of medicines in my field, you look to doctors for advice on this, it's something that's been studied. There's scientific evidence. We know what's in it. We know what the dose is. And generally, there's been some FDA approval on these things. So then we, as physicians, can serve our patients by giving them the pros and cons, the benefits, the risks, and they can make the decision. And then we can make a joint decision on what's in their best interest. There are some drawbacks to marijuana, which we can kind of get into later on. But some of them are the fact that it is a reinforcing chemical. The drug itself, THC, is addictive and can cause side effects, some of which are psychological. The actual way that the marijuana is delivered to patients, usually smoking it or eating it, but definitely smoking it or inhaling it, can be very damaging to the lungs. Some of the psychoactive components in marijuana can lead to worsening of bipolar, depression, anxiety, things of that nature. Also, there's been evidence to show that marijuana can delay or impair the brain development of young people, and it can be permanent, actually. People say that marijuana is not addictive. It's actually is addictive, and there is a diagnosis that we use in medicine called cannabis use disorder, just like alcohol use disorder or opiate use disorder. And there's diagnostic criteria for that, and people can abuse that, become addicted to that as well. So there are pros and cons. The pros tend to be focused on the fact, from my perspective, from our perspective, that there are chemicals in the plant that are clearly beneficial, but the plant itself, there's not enough study, enough evidence that the medical profession can get behind it in its current form. So that's kind of an overview of it.
Thank you. Do you have information on whether it should be used long-term or short-term?
Well, here's what the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and the American Society of Addiction Medicine say, and I'm a member of the American Society of Addiction Medicine and the American Medical Association. I serve on some committees there as well. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm going to paraphrase what they say. They kind of all agree with this. None of those organizations are going to advocate the use of medical marijuana as a medicine. We clearly understand there are, as I said, components to it that are beneficial. However, in its current form, it is not medicine. It has not been studied enough. So none of the major organizations and physicians are going to get behind what you say long-term or short-term use. We actually advocate no use as medicine. That's not to say if in certain people there's some benefit. There always is going to be the chance, and that some people will benefit from it as well. But as a whole, we can't get behind it. There's not enough evidence for it. So we're not going to advocate for even short-term use for it at this point.
Could I ask you to get a little bit closer to the mic and everybody just a little bit closer? And then I wanted to ask, and maybe you could answer this first for CJ. What are your opinions on medical marijuana and how it can help with epilepsy?
Okay, well, I'll start and I'll pass it on to okay. There is a component in marijuana called cannabidiol. We know it as CBD. There actually is a FDA-approved drug that is from that CBD called Aprile. It has an FDA-approved indication for a very severe form of pediatric seizure disorder called Dravet syndrome and similar things such as that. So there is a drug that is FDA-approved from the cannabis plant that is CBD that is proven to be effective for this type of seizure disorder. So clearly there's some benefit to it from that perspective. So with that, I will see what CJ has to say.
Well, to answer that question, I guess I should start with saying that I've been consuming cannabis since my 8th grade graduation party. And 2 weeks prior to Father's Day in the summer of 2018, I had quit cold turkey. My ex-wife hated the fact that I smoked. She would say I had a better relationship with Mary Jane than I did with her. So I quit. 2 weeks after that, it was Father's Day. We were actually at Great Wolf Lodge in Cincinnati. And at 6 a.m. in the morning, I had the first seizure of my life. A couple of weeks after that, I had another seizure. And then a few weeks after that, I had another seizure. After the 4th seizure, I was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, which affects my memory and my speech. So sometimes I have a little hiccup when speaking, and then my short-term memory, I hate to say it's bad, it's not the best, is what I like to say. But from my personal experience, cannabis does help with my epilepsy. And more than that, it is a combination of things. It's not only just smoking alone, it's ensuring that I get enough rest, that I maintain and are mindful of what I'm stressed out about. I've given up alcohol, have to ensure that I get plenty of rest. So it's a combination of things that where the actual use of cannabis is all in line. So it's not just cannabis in itself, it's a multitude of things, in my opinion, but that's just me personally. When it comes to cannabis, I think it affects everyone in a different way, but it just comes to a fact where you have to know yourself. You have to research the actual plan to see how it will possibly benefit you.
Thank you. Dr. Murphy, have you, as a pain specialist, have you had patients, even though it's not legal here, ask about this for different conditions?
All the time. In fact, I wrote an article that was published in Louisville Medicine in October, certainly recently, and I titled it "The Elephant in the Room," because so many people come to see me or come to the doctor, and it's on their mind. You can't deny the fact that the question's out there: is this going to help me for my condition? And I'm a pain specialist. I'm also an addiction medicine specialist. But really, most of what I do is pain management. And interestingly enough, there has been probably the best evidence out there, scientific evidence that the chemicals in marijuana or cannabis actually is beneficial for chronic pain, especially if chronic pain is what I call some of the odd pains, like nerve damage pain. We call it neuropathic pain. So yes, I have patients ask about it. My take on that is, I believe that in my role as a physician, I need to educate my patients so they understand the pros and cons, the risks and the benefits. You know, we talk about first do no harm, and every patient's different. Some patients will benefit in it as an individual, and my job is to help them decide, are you that patient that would benefit? So in that case, knowing the patient in that individual relationship, then I can explore where this might fit in. And if they ask about it, you know, of course I can say in Kentucky and Indiana, where I practice, it's not legal to use it, but I know that they're going to find it and they may use it. So my job is to let them understand in their situation the pros and cons. And in some cases, I said this in my article, I reread it before I came down here. I honestly can't look these people in the eyes sometimes and tell them without question, this is bad for you. I don't know sometimes. In certain instances, it might actually be a benefit, especially if they can't afford other medicines or whatever, and they're using it and they've had some benefit with it. I can tell them that it's not medicine, that I don't know exactly what they're getting. And, if we don't have controls over what's, where it comes from and what's actually in what they're getting. And also the fact that if they're inhaling it, no medicine is combustible and inhaled. There's nothing we have that's like that. So you really don't know exactly the amount they're getting, the dose, or even really exactly what they're getting. But if they are having some benefit with it, I will discuss with them, in a compassionate way, the pros and cons, and help them make a really informed decision. And sometimes, certainly I'm not the person to say you can't do it, but if they feel like it's in their best interest, the benefits outweigh the risk, I wouldn't stand in their way.
Thanks. Brian, I'm going to ask you, you're based in Ohio where cannabis has been legal for a few years. What kinds of challenges have you seen come up since it's been allowed?
That's a good question. So yeah, Ohio passed this law in 2016, and I've had clients, since pretty much 2017 who are part of the program. Also advised a number of physicians and health systems in Ohio on crafting policies and procedures about it. So I would say that some of the bigger challenges are the ones that I think you hear echoed maybe by the business community. A lot of them, talk about employees' use of marijuana and things like that. And I'll also say that the licensure process for getting different entities involved in the program can also be a bit contentious depending on how the legislature drafts the law itself. But I guess just to take a step back, what's good about being in a position like Kentucky is, with having seen all these other states craft different laws, because there are different lawmakers in every state, you can sort of use like a laboratory approach and look at what has been successful in other states and try to draft your own law and try to avoid a lot of those pitfalls that people are worried about. And so, for example, in Ohio, Ohio's law is very employer friendly. It says that you can terminate an employee if you want, even if they have a medical marijuana card. That's different in other states, but at least in Ohio, that's not the case. And so, those different chambers of commerce and different businesses, when they heard this law was coming, they lobbied their politicians and they said, hey, we're okay with this happening, but we need this type of protection for our economic interests, for example. I will also say, yeah, from a licensure perspective, you see very different approaches in different states to how to get people involved in the program. So, for example, in Ohio, there are 4 main licenses that were given out at the beginning. So cultivators, processors, dispensaries, and laboratories. Cultivators grow it, they give it to the processors turn it into the different products that you eventually see on the shelves. Before they make it to the shelves, they go to the laboratories to be tested to make sure that they're within the acceptable limits of the law for how much THC is allowed to be in each product. So a very tightly regulated industry, much like other regulated industries in this country in different states. And Ohio, in order to get one of these licenses, their very first law called for a competitive scoring process. And so you essentially saw, I had farmers in rural Athens County, Ohio, calling me saying, hey, I want to get in on this. And I had to be honest with them and just say, you are going to go up against multi-state operators, meaning marijuana companies that have different hubs in California, Oregon, Colorado, and the law was drafted in a way that was very unfavorable for them. So there were points given out for how much experience potential applicants had in the industry, who was within their company, what kind of security they would have. Essentially, the more and more you could put forth on these applications, and they had page limits, but some of these applications were 700, 800 pages long. So it's just like, how much information can I throw at these consultants who are grading these applications to up my score? And so you see the rural farmer in Athens County who's just like, I've been growing corn and soybeans my entire life. I think I can handle marijuana. They just sort of got shut out. So another drawback is just, the way in which those who want to get involved in the industry are practically able to do so. And then, there are plenty of other drawbacks. I'm sure we'll get into it. But yeah, I think Ohio overall did a good job in the sense that it is tightly regulated, maybe a little over-regulated because we just had to announce a brand new licensing round for dispensaries. The state added 70 new dispensaries recently. And so that was just because patient reach was too far. Some patients were driving hours to go to a dispensary in the state. And so they tended to be clustered in a lot of different more metropolitan areas. So the state wanted to evaluate, who has access to what, how many patients per dispensary there are, and they did a number of studies on this, and they decided, hey, we think we need 70 more in these certain areas. And so they had applicants go ahead and apply for, new licensure.
So a person, if they have a prescription, they may be lawfully taking cannabis, but their employer can still terminate them.
Correct.
And they don't really have a case against that. Is that right?
No, they don't. So there are certain states that have drafted laws. I said Ohio's employer friendly. Certain states have laws that are very employee friendly. So mainly a number of the states in the Northeast, for example. Connecticut is one of those states, and there's a few others, Massachusetts, that have these provisions that say employees are protected, even if they have a medical marijuana card. You're not allowed to fire them solely based on the fact that they have a card. There have also been court cases in those states that have awarded employees money damages for being terminated. But in Ohio, still a very employer-friendly law. So again, something for Kentucky legislators to think about. If that's an argument, then go ahead and draft something similar to Ohio. If your constituents do want it, there's a way around these different things, and you can draft your legislation to do that. You have that power.
Do you have any sense of what decriminalization has looked like in Ohio since it's been allowed, what that could look like here?
That's a tough one for me. It borders on criminal law. I really don't do any criminal law, so there might be a criminal lawyer watching this right now saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'll give you my general thoughts on that. Cincinnati itself as a city decriminalized marijuana, I think 2 summers ago. And so I believe what that means is you cannot get thrown into jail, and you might be limited to getting like a misdemeanor or a ticket if you do get caught with marijuana or something like that. But I do tend to think that, yes, even though Ohio does have a medical marijuana law and program, there are definitely still people out there who use marijuana on their own. And, they've just never had, they should not have an issue when they're in a place like these different metropolitan areas, like a Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus, those different areas that have decriminalized it.
Thank you.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
This issue of decriminalization. Now, on the one hand, where I mentioned that my understanding of the American Medical Association's position on that it's marijuana as it stands now is not a medicine. However, they come out very strongly in favor of decriminalization because it's something that people are using, and there are health repercussions because of this. And actually, these large physician organizations advocate doing away with the criminalization of this substance and treating it as a public health issue. Whereas instead of fines, perhaps people are then sent to counseling or they get, public health services as opposed to misdemeanors or even monetary fines, which can really disproportionately affect marginalized communities and minoritized communities. In fact, so on the one hand, the people watching might think, well, gosh, the doctors are not in favor of letting people do this. We are in favor of what's in the patient's best interest, as long as we have science and evidence to back us up. But we're also strongly opposed to the criminalization of this. And one of the big problems with marijuana is that it is considered by the federal government a Schedule I drug. And what that means is that it's categorized in the worst possible light with heroin and drugs like that. They're supposed to have zero medical benefit or medical use. Well, it's almost absurd that marijuana would be categorized as a federal Schedule I drug. This also means that it's almost impossible to study it. So on the one hand, where I said, we doctors, we need more evidence to get behind this, we're not allowed to study it because it's basically an illegal drug. In order to study marijuana, you have to get it from the federal government. There's one source you can get it from. So you can't have widespread studies and collect evidence to know, whether it's going to be safe or not. So we need to change the fact that it's a Schedule I drug. We need to decriminalize it as well. Then we can step forward and we can perhaps get behind this better when we have more evidence to get behind it.
Thank you. CJ, I wanted to pass it to you, if that's all right, and just find out a little bit more about what your organization does to advocate for this and what the social impact could be if it's legalized.
So Minorities for Medical Marijuana is a national nonprofit with a localized focus. So what we ensure that we do is we want to open the doors of access for individuals who look like me, whether that be through education, advocacy, referrals, or whatever the case may be. But in terms of the economic impact of what we're actually focused on, just like each of the panelists has stated, decriminalization is a must before legalization. Before you open the doors to this multi-billion-dollar industry, you have to have decriminalization. Because I work as a citizen lobbyist in meeting with the legislators. And one thing that I've learned when it comes to politics and when it comes to legislation, nothing happens retroactive. So this is a topic that has to be addressed before there is actual legalization. Because as it stands, Kentucky has one of the highest incarceration rates in the country. On a national level, I believe it's like 700 arrests per 100,000. In Kentucky, it's almost 900 per 100,000. But more than that, for Black men, it's 3,500 per 100,000. So here in the state of Kentucky, an individual who looks like me is 10 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis than my white counterpart. So that is the highest in the nation. So we stand for decriminalization first before legalization even happens, because it's of the utmost importance that the war on drugs is actually talked about, and it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. Because unfortunately, the war on drugs is racially based. Let's just be frank, that's what it is. It targets individuals who look like me. And it started with the Nixon administration. Then, of course, with the Don't Say No by the Reagan administration. And then the crime bill by the Clinton administration. It just added on, where we are actually targeted. And the war affects us more so than any other community here in the country. So that's one of the main aspects of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, is we like to educate individuals regarding the plant, because there is a lot of disinformation out there. Even though this is the age of information, there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. So you definitely have to, when it comes to cannabis, you have to challenge the status quo. Then you also have to do your own research. And then after you do that, do your own research, then that's where you talk to individuals and professionals, where you can ask questions based off of the research that you've actually obtained.
What's some of the misinformation out there that you try to clear up?
So yeah, dealing with the legislators, Kentucky is a red state. There's 138 legislators. I believe 108 of them are Republicans. So in talking with the Republicans, a lot of them still refer to cannabis as a gateway drug. And there are studies out there, and from my personal experience, I've only used cannabis. I've never used pills. I've never done any other drug besides cannabis. So in my personal experience, it's not a gateway drug. But then when you talk to the legislators also, they still refer to it as the devil's lettuce, which is very unfortunate that they have that perspective. Because when you come from that point of view, of course, you're going to have a negative outlook on cannabis, and you're not going to even consider what your constituents are going through in order to even consider legalizing the plant or even reducing some of the harsh prohibition laws that are associated with it. So it's just, there's a lot of misinformation, as I said, and it's kind of hard to battle because especially here in Kentucky, in my opinion, again, as a citizen lobbyist, a lot of it is religious based. And more than that, it's also rural based. So it's rural religious Republicans who stand up against cannabis, and is the reason why cannabis, in my opinion, here in Kentucky is moving at a snail's pace. We haven't made any headway. It's made it through the House twice, and always gets stuck in the Senate, unfortunately. So in speaking with Representative Jason Nemus in next year's legislative session, it's going to be introduced in the Senate first. So we are going to be tackling this issue from the Senate side in terms of challenging the information and the point of view that these Republicans have to show them what the truth actually is from a citizen and a constituent's point of view.
I want to comment on the gateway aspect of it. And I've heard this a lot as well. It's come up a lot. Cannabis is a reinforcing drug. It does have some addictive properties to it. Like one of the things like alcohol does, for example, clearly opioids, benzodiazepines. But cannabis clearly has some of that addictive properties to it, but not in everybody. Okay, and the thing is that it's not going to be that everyone who uses cannabis is going to go on to heroin or something like that. People that have risk factors, for example, if a lot of the factors that predispose somebody to addiction are genetic. So if you've had a problem with drugs or alcohol in the past, maybe you should avoid anything that's reinforcing, including cannabis. If you have a first-degree relative, father, mother, sister, or brother, or a first-degree relative that has a drug problem, an addiction, perhaps you should avoid cannabis because you might be at greater risk. And in that sense, it's a gateway like any other reinforcing drug might be. But across the board, I would say it's not always going to be a gateway drug. So I want to also comment on your about the minority and racial aspect of it. I want you to know, and I want everyone out there to know, that the American Medical Association and the American Society of Addiction Medicine understands this, and they acknowledge that the war on drugs, in a sense, I don't want to use the word war on drugs, but the policies that have gone on have been disproportionately hard on minorities and the marginalized communities in that respect, and that going forward, some deference needs to be, if we're going to have some legalization, there should be some place at the table for these communities, so they can in a sense benefit, maybe perhaps economically or whatever, going forward, because they've been disproportionately harmed in the past. And one of the things we're concerned about is that large companies, and let's just call it like big tobacco, it would be a problem if big marijuana became an entity, because the concern that the economic benefit would outweigh the other benefits or the other reasons why we want this legalized. So we are on, I can tell you that if you look at the position papers from the American Medical Association and the American Society of Addiction Medicine, I think you will find that we're supportive of what you said.
May I comment? I think that's a really good point. And I'll just, two different states here. So Ohio and New York, for example. New York has had a medical marijuana program for a while, but it recently passed an adult use recreational program that is kind of starting to get off the ground. They do have a provision in their law that talks about social equity applicants, and there is a certain number of licenses that need to be awarded to social equity applicants, those minority communities, marginalized communities. And so again, different ways that legislators can handle drafting this type of law to address that issue. Ohio also had a similar provision when its law was passed in 2016. And it said, if I have the percentage right, I think it was 15% of the licenses in the entire program had to go to minorities or women-owned businesses, et cetera. What you run into from a legal perspective there is that law was struck down as unconstitutional in Ohio because it favored certain groups over others. So if that type of provision does get included in some sort of Kentucky medical marijuana law, it likely will get challenged. But yes, other states have done the same thing, and we haven't seen courts react quite the same way. It's it's the legal system. People make different arguments on either side. A judge makes a decision, but just trying to say that there are different ways to sort of handle the disproportionate impact on certain communities with respect to marijuana.
And I think from what I've learned, it has something to do with affirmative action. So if there's a state that has a ban on affirmative action, social equity is going to have a hard time getting added to the legislation. I mean, currently as it stands, Kentucky has no social equity written into the legislation. That's one of the goals that I have in trying to ensure that individuals who look like me are actually written into the legislation. A lot of that is based off of the history of Kentucky as it relates to cannabis. I don't know if too many individuals know what Kentucky's actually history is, but at one point in time, it all stems from hemp and associated with hemp in the 1800s, the late 1700s, and throughout the 1800s up until the prohibition of cannabis. Here in Kentucky, they refer to hemp as the nigger crop. Now, hemp was a very laborious, and it was a very dirty crop, and everything was done by hand. So there was a labor monopoly of Black men who worked the fields here in Kentucky. And Kentucky produced at one point over 90% of the nation's hemp. It actually assisted in the cotton industry in terms of the baggage. It was made from hemp, the bags that the hemp was actually stored in. So as it relates to social equity, as I like to call it now, social economics, it is a must that it's written into the legislation here in Kentucky because no other state has the history that we do. No other state has the soil that we do. As I like to say, Kentucky is the fertile crescent of the cannabis space. We are the breadbasket of the cannabis space. So when we do legalize, there's going to be a premium product here in Kentucky. So what we must do is we must be the model for the whole entire country because we are the best place in the world to grow, harvest, and smoke cannabis.
What kinds of actions are you taking now to help prepare to make sure minority entrepreneurs have opportunities to get involved at that level? If it's legalized.
So every quarter we have a DICE networking mixer, and DICE stands for Diversity in Cannabis Experience. We recently had one in March at the Black Jockeys Lounge on 4th Street, and the place was packed. Prior to that, we had one, it was in December, where we actually had Representative Nima Kakari, was actually one of our panelists. She actually introduced a constitutional bill where we would allow the citizens to actually decide on the ballot in regards to the legalization. So one of the main courses of action that we take is education. That's where everything starts. Because once you actually know something and then you apply what you know, that's how you're able to make progress, especially in the case of minorities and for individuals who look like me, we have to know before we proceed forward. So of course, education is the start. And then once we're educated, that's when we move to advocacy. Because if this is going to move, or we want to progress here in Kentucky, the citizens of Kentucky must contact their legislators and let them know where they stand. That is the most important thing. And when a legislator tells you that they're not for cannabis, well, it's up to the citizen to decide why they're not for it. And then let them know why they should be for it. Because when it comes to this type of legislation, there's no straddling the fence. You have to be for it, in my opinion, because it's what over 90% of Kentuckians want. Not to mention the tax revenue that's going to be generated, not to mention the jobs that are going to be created, and not to mention the entrepreneurship that's going to be enhanced here in Kentucky. It's going to be a well-rounded thing that's going to help the state, because when you think about what COVID-19 did, not only to Kentucky, but across the country, there's a lot of budget shortfalls and budget deficits in local communities. So cannabis can be used as a way to assist these communities and these local municipalities in actually finding funds for education, for scholarships, for healthcare, for drug programs and the like. There's a lot that can be done with the legalization of cannabis.
I want to comment on that you said most people want this, okay? And I think that the studies have shown and polls have shown that a majority of people are in favor of legalizing marijuana in some form. And an even greater number are in favor of legalizing it for medical use. So there's a lot of public sentiment going toward this. As a physician, concern that I have is that what really society is asking for is legalization of this product, being able to use this. And they're looking to the medical community to carry the water for this, to kind of bring this along. We're talking today about medical marijuana, but really we're talking about freedom or access or liberty to do something in economics, things of that nature. But the title of this form, I guess, is medical marijuana. And the first thing that I said is it's not medicine, okay? And some statistics out there that are interesting. Everyone thinks that, this country is stoned and we're all using marijuana. It's not that common, really. I mean, maybe 10%, if we're being generous. 10% of the adult population, uses marijuana on a regular basis in the past year. A higher number, unfortunately, of adolescents and high schoolers using it. As many as 30% use it in the past 30 days in some studies. So it's unfortunately way too prevalent in kids. And they're not using it for medical reasons. They're using it for recreational reasons or other reasons, to fit in, peer pressure, things of that nature. Most Americans, adults who use it, are not using it for medical reasons. In fact, if we're generous again, maybe up to 10% of people that use marijuana are using it for medical reasons. So that's a subset. And interestingly enough, of that 10% that use it for medical reasons, 75% of those people also use it for recreational use. So the real need that we're seeing out there, that we have to have it for medical use, it's really not used that prevalently for medical use. It's so much more used for other reasons in this country. So as a medical community, I would rather us be here to educate the pros and cons and the risks and of it, and perhaps even the benefits or whatever. But it's not from a medical standpoint, the argument is really of a small number of people. And the fact that we might push this and because and let the medical use of it be the charge, be the front of it, is probably not again, I said the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that it's out there and people want to have legal access to it for a lot of reasons, most of which is not medical. And we should really have a serious discussion as a society, not necessarily as a physician, but as a society, as to whether or not we want to do that.
If it was regulated and legalized in our area, would you consider prescribing it?
If it is regulated and it is legalized and something that physicians do, absolutely, I would learn about it and I would consider prescribing it. If it's something that people can have legal access to, again, as individual patients, I would work with them and decide if it's in their best interest. So of course, I would bring that into my portfolio of what I can offer patients.
Brian, what other things that you're aware of without a state law in place legalizing it in Kentucky and knowing that every state law is going to be different? What should providers, potential providers, and business people keep in mind legally?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say that one of the most sort of contentious issues for the bigger providers, when I say bigger providers, I'm talking about hospital systems and things like that employ a lot of physicians. They will come to us and say, hey, you know, for example, in Ohio, when medical marijuana was legalized, there was a big push to figure it out because these big providers knew that patients were going to show up at their door and say, hey, I'm really interested in this. I have X condition, I qualify. You know, what can I do to get it? And you know, a lot of these big providers, the reimbursement that they get from Medicare, for example, is enormous. If they were ever excluded from participation in Medicare, they wouldn't be able to see a ton of different patients, and the revenue would drop dramatically, you know, maybe putting them out of business. So the big issue for a lot of the big providers who are enrolled in Medicare is compliance with federal law. And federal law, you know, obviously we said earlier, Schedule I drug, so illegal to have any sort of marijuana on your premises, recommended by your providers and things like that. But what's important to note is that two things. One, no provider, I've done extensive research on this, Medicare, the federal government has never, ever come after any sort of major provider or small physician and said, hey, we are going to exclude you from participation in Medicare because we found out that you were recommending medical marijuana pursuant to your state's law. It has not happened ever. California enacted its law in 1996, and you know, we've had 28 years of this, or sorry, 26 years of this now, and we've just never seen that actually come to fruition. So from a legal perspective, that should put a lot of the decision makers or executives at a lot of the big providers sort of at ease that, you know, that's something that has just not happened. I also think that one thing that did occur when California passed this law in 1996 was the federal government immediately said that, hey, any physicians who do decide to recommend medical marijuana to their patients, we will revoke your DEA license and you will no longer be able to prescribe controlled substances. And that was sort of the federal government's response to California. California, you said you want to legalize medical marijuana, well, we're going to do this to any of your physicians. Again, sort of physicians carrying the water for the whole thing, right? And that got struck down in the courts. The federal courts ruled in favor of physicians, and they said that physicians should be allowed to communicate with their patients. It's their First Amendment right under the Constitution about anything that they believe might be a benefit to their patients. So we are not going to allow the federal government to threaten any physicians with revocation of their DEA licenses or anything like that. So just sort of, you know, two legal concepts. Oh, and sorry. Third, the most important one is what's known as the Rohrabacher Amendment. This was an amendment that was introduced into the federal government spending bill in 2014 by Congressman Dana Rohrabacher from the Northern District of California. He has recently, in the last few years, lost re-election in California, but him and another senator from Oregon, they were responsible for introducing this amendment to the federal government spending bill and basically said, if you're a state that has passed a medical marijuana law, the federal government is prohibited from using any funds to go after anyone in that state who's participating legally in their state's medical marijuana program. So something that a lot of people are unaware of, that has been tested in the courts, and it has always come out in favor of those who are participating in the industry. Now, those who are participating in the industry improperly, not doing things in accordance with state law, they lose when they try to bring up the Rohrabacher Amendment defense. That's an easy one. But if you're in a state and you are participating like you're supposed to under your state's law, you will not, the federal government is not able to use money that's, you know, directing US prosecutors to come knock on your door or the DEA and to do something to you. That is illegal.
What about have you heard of any liability toward providers?
Oh, that's a good question too. I have not. I know that there are different, you know, medical malpractice concerns and insurance concerns, but and I have my own theories about why that might be. But I have not heard of any doctors getting sued for malpractice associated with marijuana. I can imagine that's because, you know, the drug itself is not maybe all that bad. And that's me speaking, no medical background. I'm just saying that very different from maybe some other things. And so it just does not come across my plate. I sort of consume cannabis law and news, and I've never seen a doctor get sued for it.
The Federation of State Medical Boards has a model policy that you can go and you can Google it, you can search it and easily look at that. It talks about if it's going to be legalized, if it were to be legalized, this is at least what we would like it to be. And it talks about being prescribed or being advised or talked about in the context of a bona fide, legitimate doctor-patient or provider-patient relationship. And that means that it's individualized care. There is, a relationship there, that we were in examination, you were understanding the patient, giving them appropriate medical advice. They do recommend that it be considered a controlled substance in some form, because like other, like opioids, for example, maybe not Schedule II, but they're, not the highest level of controlled substance, but something that they can kind of monitor and regulate. And thus, know how much is being prescribed and have proper records and things like that, like a real doctor relationship should be. Not like in some places where I was in California not long ago, and on the beach, there was like the nurses with the bikinis on and come on in, you got a headache, we'll give you your marijuana. I mean, that's not, hopefully we're not going to, no offense to California. But it's, if we are going to use it as something to benefit people, it needs to be, in a sense, controlled, regulated, and in a proper therapeutic relationship. And that means also that if it is legalized and regulated, that we can have labels on it, perhaps, like most food products. Heck, we even have that with alcohol, for example. You know what percentage of alcohol is in what you're drinking. That what percentage of THC, for example, is in the strain or what they're giving. There's a label on it. Perhaps even there could be a limit on the strength of it. Back in the 60s, the marijuana was much less potent than it is now. What you can get now is very potent, and the potency of it increases those risks we talked about, the risks of psychosis and anxiety and withdrawal syndromes. So the potency of the marijuana can be a problem, but it can be regulated as well. Also, we're not at all in favor of smoking, I'm sorry. It's because of the lung problems or whatever, there are better ways to get a medicine in your system that's less damaging to your lungs, for example. But there could be it can be packaged in a way, for example, that kids it would be less likely that kids would want to use it or whatever, and so there's ways of regulating it that can probably make it safer, and we need to make sure that we're doing that if we are going to legalize it. And I do recommend that anybody that's working on the policies look at the Federation of State Medical Boards model policy, because I think that it is well constructed and could be very good guidance in this.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And as the legislation stands here, House Bill 136 flower is not allowed. So everything has to be concentrated, topicals, or edibles. So when they do set up dispensaries, that's what's going to be sold. For the medical marijuana, flower is not allowed.
Okay. We have a few questions that have come in. Actually, do you want to comment? And the first question is actually going to you.
Okay, sure. I was just going to say Ohio prohibits smoking medical marijuana.
So this first one, what are the business challenges to opening a dispensary, federal versus state laws? Like, for example, banking issues? Yeah,
that's a good one. That's pretty much it, really, from a federal versus state law. I mean, like I said earlier, because of that Rohrabacher Amendment and the acceptance of these states being able to craft their own laws, there really isn't a federal sort of challenge out there. You have to get comfortable with the risk that, maybe someone could try to make some argument that you're somehow violating federal law. But again, with that Rohrabacher Amendment out there as your protection, you're doing what you're supposed to do according to your state's law. You're not allowed to be touched. So banking is definitely the biggest issue. But since marijuana has become such an accepted industry, you will find that there are a number of different banks who have decided they will bank these types of clients. And so in Ohio, there are a number of different institutions that, I've recommended to my clients, and they go. The banks, on the other hand, they do have to jump through some additional hoops. It costs them a little more money. The federal government has put out guidance that says, hey, if you are going to bank these cannabis clients, you have to do X, Y, and Z. So it can be a little bit of a headache for them, but some of these banks have actually pivoted and say, we want to be the marijuana bank. We can develop efficiencies and operationalize what we're doing and comply with those extra hoops. We might charge these cannabis clients a little bit more to use us, but that's sort of the game that we've decided that we want to play, and it results in more revenue, and maybe they get known for being sort of the cannabis bank, and that's what they're after. I guess otherwise, just from a state perspective, again, it depends on the way that the law was drafted. It can be very expensive to get a license, and they're like in Ohio, for example, I think that the dispensary application fee was $5,000. Not to some people who are in business, maybe not a crazy sticker shock, but then on top of it, there's a number of other different requirements. You had to have a $250,000 surety bond. You have to show that you have X amount of liquid capital, and the liquid capital requirements are also very high. I think they were at $1 million, and so it's just the way that the law is drafted can automatically put people on the sideline.
And I would camel back off of that and say, if you're thinking about opening a dispensary, I would advise you not to do it. It is a very competitive process. And unfortunately, what a lot of people don't realize, it costs anywhere from $1 million to $3 million to start a dispensary. And based off of that initial capital, you won't see a return on that capital, most likely for 3 to 5 years. So if you're able to withstand that time frame, by all means consider it. But the most important question when it comes to a dispensary is zoning and real estate. So it can cost anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million to find the proper real estate and the proper zoning in order to open a dispensary. So if you're considering that, just ensure that you have a large amount of access to capital. Because a dispensary is what everyone is focused on, and that's the spotlight when it comes to legalization. That's what everybody's focused on, is having a dispensary. There's so many other aspects of the cannabis space. You have your plant touching and your non-plant touching. So there is a lot more room for growth in the non-plant touching business segment of cannabis. So if you are considering getting into the space, that's where I would suggest individuals go.
Brian, have you heard anything? Have you heard things like that too? And then also, just to clarify what you were saying earlier about licensing, was it just as hard for farmers, non-marijuana farmers, to get these licenses? Were the big guys coming in and taking those as well?
Yeah, and that was basically just because of the way the law was drafted, making it a competitive application process. You had to be able to show that you had experience in either farming. You got more points on the application if you had experience in cannabis farming. So, there was just a push by the big marijuana industry to come on in, show that, hey, we already have these people on our board. These are the people who are going to be advising us. This is our experience. And so they automatically just got more points, more points, more points. Now, the state did sort of recognize that. There were a number of appeals and lawsuits over the scoring in Ohio. And also people felt left out because of the requirements were so onerous. And when they recently did this new round, when they decided that they needed more dispensaries, they did a lottery process. Now, the lottery process has its own challenges because, again, you have to pay an application fee. You might not see that money. You will not see that money again. It's not refundable. And the application process itself can be pretty onerous. You have to have real estate. And again, that's very difficult. And so 1,400 people applied. And what they did was literally a lottery ball comes up. And so 70 applicants out of 1,400 had their lottery ball pop up. So again, you just have to, it's a tough way to sort of balance, what type of law do you craft to give out these licenses? There are other states like Oklahoma, which I understand has been described to me as sort of the Wild West. They just wrote a law, and I will say that I think it's House Bill 136 in Kentucky. Kentucky has right now, the way that I looked at that law, that the draft was it's Wild West, it's Oklahoma. It is anybody who wants to get in can get in. And if you do want to sort of forecast what could happen with Kentucky if that bill does pass, look at Oklahoma. There are a ton of different people involved in the industry, which is good. But then it is very, very competitive, and it ultimately the market will go where it dictates, and some people will survive and some people won't.
So as the legislation stands now, there's no vertical integration when it comes to the actual cannabis. And he is correct, as the law is written, they have it written where there will be at least 25 dispensaries in the state. They have it written where there will be at least 15 processing facilities. So that's how the legislation is written, where they have the language where it says at least, so that does allow for
Scoring, no lottery.
Yeah, none of that.
And the application fee is very.
Yeah, it's very low as well. So it does have the possibility of being the Wild Wild West, where you can enter the space and the state's going to allow you to fail. If that's the case, and that's definitely the case in Oklahoma.
Thank you. I think we just have a couple more minutes and time for one last question. This is from Daniel Williams. It's a multi-part question for all three. Do you think medical marijuana is beneficial, and will it ever be legalized in the state? And another part is why hasn't it been yet, when so many more than 30 states have legalized medical marijuana?
Well, I'll tackle the last part of that question. Mark Twain said it best when he stated that when the end of the world comes, he's going to move to Kentucky because we're 20 years behind. And that definitely is the case when it comes to legislation in regards to cannabis. We definitely are most likely going to be one of the last states to legalize on the medical front. For some reason, Republicans stand proud on the fact that Kentucky has the most restrictive medical marijuana legislation in the country. There's only 5 qualifying conditions. As I said, flower will not be permitted. So from my perspective, if this industry, which is going to be set up by individuals who claim they've never touched the plant or they've never smoked the plant, the main issue is if you have no experience with the plant, how do you expect to establish an industry that's going to be able to thrive? So to me, there is a lack of knowledge on why it hasn't been legalized. But from my personal perspective, I definitely see the benefits to cannabis. For example, when I consume cannabis, I don't consume a lot, I microdose. I have a collection of tobacco pipes where I just use a couple of pinches of the cannabis plant, and that's what I consume. So I don't consume a lot, and I don't smoke often. If I smoke once a day, it'd be once every 2 days or 3 days on when I feel like I need it. So there definitely are some benefits to it. And hopefully this next legislative session, which is unfortunately only 30 days, and starting in January, it doesn't seem as if that's going to be enough time to move this legislation forward. But that's why it's important for the citizens to come together now, educate ourselves, and then we move lock and step as one in order to get this legislation to pass.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess this will be a closing comment too. I do think that one day there will be access to what we consider medical marijuana. I believe there's clearly some benefit to some components of it. Unfortunately, we don't have enough information yet to get behind it and to be able to recommend it. I think the medical community as a whole doesn't want to be an impediment to something that's going to benefit somebody. We just don't have the data yet. One of the reasons is because we can't study it because it's still a Schedule I drug. It's still a criminal offense. It needs to be decriminalized. It needs to be taken off the Schedule I. We do need more research on this. We have to make sure we keep this out of the hands or keep it away from kids and young people. They're the ones most adversely affected by it. And also, I want to remind everybody that remember, it is not a benign substance. There are some benefits to it. There are clearly some harms from this. And it's something we really have to consider carefully how we're going to allow this to get into the community. If people want to know more about this and they want to contact me or other people about this, you can go through the Greater Lowell Medical Society. We will put you in touch with people that can give the science behind this so that we can help you make these very important decisions. We don't want to be the impediment. We want to be the educators and give you the information you need to make proper decisions. But we hope that the decision on medical marijuana is based upon a public health decision, not economics so much, but in the public health best interest.
Thank you.
I'll just say that, from a legal perspective, I think that, there's sort of two things going on. One is whether the people in the particular jurisdiction want it. And so, if they do, I think that as a legislator, you should be doing what the people want. That's what a democracy is. And I also think that in doing so, you have the power to draft a law that is, as tightly regulated as you want it. You have that control. And so I think that from that perspective, I've seen it be beneficial because a lot of the different things that opponents said about marijuana in Ohio before the law was passed, I just haven't seen those things happen. Maybe those will be down the line. I'm not going to dismiss them, but for right now in the short term, I haven't seen a lot of the things that people were saying would occur, especially with, maybe like car accidents and things like that. I know there's a lot of data out there, but there's a lot of different sort of flashpoints and things that people bring up. And there may not be comprehensive medical studies, but there are different studies and data points out there that I think people need to rely upon when they go ahead and try to draft some sort of law, because I do think it can be beneficial. And I view it as beneficial as long as the constituents do want that. I think that that's a tenet of democracy. That's why we all live here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, we've talked with Dr. James Patrick Murphy, CJ Carter, State Director with Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and Brian Higgins, attorney in Cincinnati.
And if I can just say one last thing, I always like to state this, especially for the legislators. It's time for the Flintstones to make some Jetson decisions.
We'd like to thank everyone for showing up today and participating. We really appreciate your input and your insight, and this is a great program. We look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thank you for hosting, and it was very informative. So thanks much.